Do absolutely nothing but assume you already won, and it comes. Neville Goddard taught that the life you are living right now, this week, in your kitchen, in your car, in your quiet bedroom at night, is already answering to a feeling you assumed long before you ever lifted a hand to try to change it. There is an old story tucked into the beginning of the book of Genesis, and Neville Goddard read it not as ancient history, but as a picture of your own mind. It says, "And on the seventh day God ended his work, which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made." That is Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. And Neville Goddard would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? The work is already finished before the rest begins." The rest is not a reward you earn after the labor. The rest is the proof that the work in imagination was already complete. God here is not a bearded figure in the sky. God is your own awareness, your own I am, the very consciousness reading these words right now. And when Scripture says God rested, it is teaching you that the moment you have imagined the end and felt it as real, your work is done. All that remains is to rest in the assumption, to stop struggling, to stop pushing, to stop checking the outer world for proof. And here is where most people miss it entirely. You were taught your whole life that you must labor for what you want, that you must strain and force and manage every circumstance with your own two hands. And so the very desire you carry gets buried under all you're doing. When the truth this verse whispers is the exact opposite. The getting is finished, the instant the feeling is assumed, and everything after that was only ever meant to be rest. Say it with me. I am already living the answered wish. I am at rest inside my own knowing. Imagination creates my reality. Again, I am already living the answered wish. I am at rest inside my own knowing. Imagination creates my reality. If something in you just went quiet and settled when you heard that, type the words, "It's done," in the comments below. Let it be your seal. And if you would like tomorrow's teaching to find you the same quiet way this one did, subscribe now, so it reaches you. The first key is you stop doing and you start assuming. Most of us were raised to believe a wish is chased down through effort, through hustle, through the right words said to the right person at the right moment. So when you hear "do absolutely nothing, but assume you already won," it sounds almost irresponsible. And yet think of the ordinary defeat so many of us carry quietly. You have wanted the raise, the reconciliation, the healthy body, the calm household, and you have tried every outer maneuver you know, and still the door stays shut. You are not alone in this. Nearly everyone watching has lived that exact tiredness. Here is the reframe. It is not that effort is wrong. It is that effort aimed at the outer world, while the inner world still assumes lack, will only produce more lack dressed up in new circumstances. Imagination is the one and only creator. So the only labor that ever truly mattered was always the inner labor of assuming the wish fulfilled. Picture a woman waiting for a phone call that means the deal went through. She does not sit chewing her nails. She does not draft 12 versions of a follow-up email. Instead, she quietly assumes the tone of someone who already has good news. She moves through her evening as though it is already settled. That is the whole first key. You drop the strategy and you occupy the state. Not someday, but now, in this very room, before anything on the outside has shifted at all. Consider, too, the young man who wants to be asked out by the one he admires. He could spend his whole week rehearsing clever lines, checking his phone, arranging accidental meetings in hallways, and every bit of that scheming only proves to himself how far away the wish still feels. But suppose instead he simply assumes, quietly, the warm, ordinary feeling of being wanted. He does not need a single outer maneuver for that feeling. He only needs to withdraw attention from the scheming and give it wholly to the assuming. The outer world is only ever a mirror, and a mirror does not argue with the face in front of it. It simply reflects. So let your outer effort quiet down, and let your inner assumption do what it alone was built to do. Notice how much of your day is normally spent wording a message just right, timing a phone call, positioning yourself to be noticed, and imagine, just for today, redirecting that same careful attention inward instead, toward the simple felt sense that the thing is already yours. That alone is the labor, and it is finished the moment it is truly felt. I assume the end and I let the how remain none of my business. The second key is, you understand that you are never your circumstance. You are only ever the state you happen to be occupying. And you can leave a state as easily as you left the room you slept in last night. Neville Goddard taught that consciousness is like a great house with countless rooms, and each room is a state of poverty, a state of sickness, a state of doubt, a state of abundance, a state of love fulfilled, and the furniture in each room is already fully furnished before you ever walk in, meaning the state of the wish fulfilled already exists, complete and whole, this instant, waiting only for you to enter it and take up residence. You are not manufacturing something new when you assume the wish fulfilled. You are simply moving your attention, your I am, out of one already existing room and into another already existing room. Think of the man who tells himself, I am always the one overlooked at work. He has lived in that room so long he has mistaken the wallpaper for his own skin. He thinks overlooked is who he is, but overlooked is only where he has been standing. The moment he understands this, he can walk down that same inner hallway and open a different door. The door marked, I am valued, I am seen, I am chosen. Now consider the woman who tells herself quietly, without even noticing she is saying it, I am always the one money slips through. She says it lightly at the grocery counter, when the total comes higher than she expected. She says it again when a bill arrives a few days early. She does not realize she is describing a room and calling it a fact. She thinks she is simply reporting on her life, but she is actually reporting on which door she keeps walking back through every single day. And here is the strange mercy hiding inside this. She does not have to argue herself out of that room. She does not have to convince herself with effort that the opposite is true. She only has to notice, gently, that she has wandered back into a familiar hallway out of habit. The way you might absent-mindedly walk into your old bedroom in a house you no longer live in, and then, just as gently, turn around and walk into the other room instead, the room already furnished with, I am the one, money flows toward easily. That room has been standing ready this whole time, whether she ever opens the door or not. This is why Neville Goddard would never tell you to fight your circumstance directly. Fighting a circumstance is like arguing with the reflection in a mirror instead of adjusting the face that casts it. It is not the reflection that needs correcting. It is the one standing in front of the glass. So when an old doubt greets you at the door of your mind, you do not have to defeat it in a debate. The third key is you learn to live in the end, and let the ordinary hours of your day prove it to you. Living in the end means you do not merely think about the wish once and hope it sticks. You inhabit the feeling of it, the way you inhabit your own clothing. Quietly, continuously, without straining. Most people misunderstand this completely. They treat the wish fulfilled as a single wish made at a shrine, spoken once with great emotion and then left there, hoping the universe remembers. But Neville Goddard taught that the end is not a place you visit, it is a place you move into and furnish and live inside. The way you live inside your own house. So let me walk you through what this looks like across one ordinary day, so the mechanism becomes undeniable to you. 7 in the morning you wake, and for one drowsy moment before the day's worries rush in, you feel the relief of the thing already accomplished. That single moment is worth more than an hour of anxious talking about your problem to a friend. 9 in the morning you are at your desk, and an old doubt tries to visit you. Instead of arguing with the doubt, you simply return your attention, gently, without drama, to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Noon arrives and someone says something that would normally sting, and you notice you barely felt it, because a person living in the end has less and less interest in the old wound. 3 in the afternoon, you catch yourself daydreaming, not about lack, but about the small, satisfied details of the answered wish, the tone of voice you will use, the sentence you will say, the quiet smile you will not be able to hide. 6 in the evening, you come home, and instead of rehearsing the day's disappointments to whoever will listen, you rehearse instead the conversation you would have if the wish were already true. 9 at night, you lie down, and for a few minutes before sleep, you deliberately imagine the scene that implies the wish is fulfilled, and you feel it as real as the mattress beneath you. Do you see what has happened across that single day? You never once forced anything. You never once manipulated another person. You simply kept returning, again and again, gently, to one assumed feeling. And notice something else about that day. The world did not stop offering you old evidence. The doubt still knocked at 9 in the morning. The sharp words still came at noon. Living in the end is not a promise that the outer world goes silent. It is a promise that you no longer need the outer world's permission to feel finished. The doubt knocked, and you simply did not answer the door the way you used to. That is the whole art. Neville Goddard called this the discipline of the disciplined imagination. Not disciplined in the sense of harsh, disciplined in the sense of faithful. Faithful the way a trellis is faithful to the vine. And faithfulness here does not mean gripping the vision tightly out of fear it will slip away. It means returning to it the way you return to a song you love. Easily, because you want to, not because you are terrified of what happens if you forget the words. Now pause for a moment and pick one real wish you are carrying, something specific, not vague, and ask yourself honestly what the final scene would look like. What would you see? What would you hear? Who would be standing near you? What small, ordinary sentence would someone say to you that could only be said if the wish had already come true? Find that one sentence, because it is not the size of the vision that moves consciousness. It is the vividness of one small, convincing detail. It is not staring at the mountain that moves it. It is standing quietly on the other side of it in feeling. So today, in the actual scattered minutes of your actual day, return to that one sentence, that one scene, the way you would return again and again to a window with a beautiful view, not to labor, only to look, only to feel, and let the feeling do what feeling alone was always able to do. I return to the end all day long, and the end returns to me. The fourth key is you use revision to close the door firmly behind you on any day that tried to convince you otherwise. Neville Goddard taught that at night, before sleep, you can go back over the events of your day the way you would review a film reel, and wherever a scene did not match the wish fulfilled, wherever someone spoke to you harshly, or you felt small, or overlooked, or afraid, you simply run the scene again in imagination, but this time you rewrite it exactly as you wish it had gone. This is not pretending the original event did not happen. It is refusing to let that event have the final authority over your consciousness. Think of the woman who was spoken to sharply by her employer in the afternoon. If she carries that tone into dinner, into sleep, she is unknowingly planting that very tone as tomorrow's harvest. But if instead she lies down at night and imagines the same conversation going warmly, respectfully, kindly, she is not lying to herself. She is choosing which version of the day gets to become seed, because Neville Goddard taught that impression precedes expression. Whatever is impressed on consciousness before sleep tends to express itself outward in the days that follow. Now consider a second example. A man calls his brother about an old family matter, and the call turns tense. Words are exchanged that neither of them quite meant, and he hangs up carrying a small hard stone in his chest. If he lets that stone sit there all evening, replaying the sharp words, mentioning it to his wife, turning it over again while brushing his teeth, he is rehearsing the very scene he most wants to be rid of. And rehearsal, Neville Goddard taught, is simply revision running backward. impressing the unwanted scene deeper instead of lifting it out. So instead, before sleep, this man closes his eyes and quietly lets the call happen again. Only now his brother's voice is warm, the old matter is met with patience. The call ends the way two people who love each other would actually want it to end. He feels the relief of it in his own chest, exactly as though it happened this way the first time, because Neville Goddard taught that the past is not fixed the way we were told. It is only fixed once you stop revising it and let it stand unedited. So revision is not denying reality, it is refusing to let an unwanted moment be the last word. It is not undoing the past, it is refusing to carry it forward into tomorrow's harvest. Notice the small frictions count just as much as the dramatic wounds, the curt reply from a cashier, the meeting where you froze, the message you instantly regretted. Each one, left unrevised, quietly becomes soil your tomorrow grows from, and each one, gently revised, becomes one more brick removed from the wall between you and the life you are assuming. So tonight, before you sleep, choose one moment from today that stung, just one, and run it again gently in your mind, exactly as you wish it had unfolded. Feel the better version as real, and let that be the seed you actually plant. I revise the day, and I plant only the harvest I want. The fifth key is the one that changes everything beneath it, and I want to walk through it with you slowly, in pieces. Because this is the key that actually turns the lock. The other 5 keys have only been describing. First, consider your own self-concept, because Neville Goddard taught that the most decisive factor in your entire life is not your circumstances, not your history, but the concept you hold of your own self. The sentence that follows the words, I am. When a person quietly assumes, I am the kind of person things do not work out for, that sentence becomes the lens through which every event of the day is filtered. Most people believe they arrive at their self-concept by gathering evidence from life. When the truth runs the other direction, life gathers its evidence from the self-concept you already assumed. Picture a man whose card is declined once, years ago, and quietly he adopts the sentence, I am the kind of man who is embarrassed with money. Now watch what that sentence does across the years. He tips less than he wants to out of fear. He avoids opening statements that could show him good news. He flinches at registers that have done nothing to him. The sentence was small, but it governed a decade. So before you ask a single outer thing to change, examine the sentence that follows your own I am, and dare to revise it first. Not I am the one who never gets the chance, but I am the one for whom things arrange themselves easily. Hold that sentence like a small flame cupped in your 2 hands, and understand a self-concept is never fixed. It is only a habit of imagining, and any habit learned can just as easily be relearned. Second, consider that everyone you meet is you pushed out. This is one of the boldest things Neville Goddard ever taught, and one of the most freeing once you let it in. The outer world of people and their behavior toward you is a dramatized reflection of your own assumptions. The coworker who dismisses you, the relative who criticizes you, all of them are, in a real psychological sense, you. Appearing outside yourself, wearing a different face. Think of a woman who dreads a certain relative at every holiday gathering. She rehearses the sharp comment for days beforehand. She braces for it in the car, and without fail the comment comes, exactly as rehearsed. She believes the relative is simply difficult, but Neville Goddard would ask her gently to notice who wrote that scene first. This does not mean other people are not real. It means your experience of them is shaped by the state you occupy while thinking of them. Change your inner conversation about a person and watch how their tone toward you begins to shift, not because you manipulated them, but because you were never dealing with them at all. You were dealing with a state, and you changed the state. Third, consider persistence, because this is where nearly every sincere person stumbles. They assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled beautifully for one evening, and the next morning looks exactly as it did before, and they conclude the method failed. when they simply stop too soon. Neville Goddard taught that an assumption, though false to the senses, if persisted in, will harden into fact. The emphasis falls on that word persisted. Think of the sculptor before the marble. The first day's chisel marks look like scratches on stone. If judged by day one, the work would be abandoned in despair. But the sculptor knows the form is already complete in imagination, and simply continues. Week after week, the shape hidden inside the stone becomes visible, only to the one who refuses to stop. The outer world will look unchanged for a while. This is not failure. This is the ordinary lag between the inner decision and its outer echo. A farmer does not stand in the field arguing with bare soil in the third week. The farmer simply keeps watering, quietly certain of a harvest no eye can yet see. Fourth, consider the state akin to sleep, because Neville Goddard gave us an actual practical technique here. At night, in that drowsy borderland, just before true sleep takes you, your resisting mind grows quiet, and whatever scene you deliberately imagine sinks in with unusual depth, the way wet clay takes an impression far more readily than dry clay ever could. So before sleep, let your body grow heavy and still, and construct one small, ordinary scene that could only be happening if your wish were already fulfilled. Not a whole movie, just one small moment, a hand on your shoulder, a voice saying congratulations, the particular relief in your own chest. Feel the floor beneath your feet in that scene. Hear the exact tone of the voice speaking to you. The more ordinary the detail, the more believable it becomes. And let sleep take you right there, still feeling it, not analyzing it, only feeling it the way you would feel a warm coat settling onto your shoulders on a cold night. Self-concept examined, the outer world recognized as your own reflection walking around in other faces, persistence honored, and the drowsy doorway used deliberately every night. These four together are really one motion, the motion of a mind that has finally stopped begging the outside world and has turned, at last, fully toward its own imagination. I am the one dreaming this life, and I dream it on purpose. The sixth key is you let the whole thing rest, because after the self-concept has been examined, after the people around you have been recognized as your own consciousness reflected, after persistence has done its quiet work, after the drowsy doorway has been visited faithfully, there is truly nothing left to do. And this is the part sincere students resist hardest, because doing feels safe. But Neville Goddard taught that the seventh day is not a reward waiting at the end of effort. It is proof the work was already finished in imagination the moment you first assumed it. So let yourself actually rest. Stop checking. Stop rehearsing your doubts to trusted friends. Stop asking the outer world for updates on a matter your own I am has already settled. Think of the man who sends off an application he has quietly assumed is already his. The moment it leaves his hands, he begins refreshing his phone, reading old messages twice, wondering if he should follow up just to be safe, and every one of those small, anxious motions is him digging the seed back up to check its roots. It is unbelief dressed politely as diligence. Now picture a second man, one who sent the very same message but did the inner work first. He felt the relief in his own chest before any reply arrived, so when evening comes he closes his laptop, eats his dinner, sleeps without his phone beside his pillow. On the outside, the two men look almost the same. Both are simply waiting. But one is straining and one is resting, and it is the resting man who is actually in agreement with his own assumption. Because rest is not the absence of faith, rest is the evidence of it. So hear this plainly. It is not that nothing remains to do. It is that the only thing worth doing was already done quietly within you. Think of the gardener who plants the seed, waters it, sets it in the sun. If he digs it up every evening out of worry, no garden could ever grow. The digging is not devotion. It is fear wearing devotion's clothes. Your one remaining task is to leave the seed buried in the rich dark soil of your own assumption and simply live your ordinary days. Unhurried, quietly certain, as someone who already knows. This is the whole quiet secret, folded inside the very title of this teaching. You do absolutely nothing on the outside, because everything worth doing has already been finished on the inside. So tonight, when the old urge rises to check, to strain, to manage, let it pass through you like weather, and return instead to stillness, to the felt certainty of the wish already granted, and rest there, the way a finished thing rests, the way a closed door rests once the guest has already stepped inside. I have done the only work that ever mattered, and now I rest. Here is the whole picture. You stop laboring on the outside, and you start assuming on the inside. That was the first key. You remember, you are never your circumstance. You are only ever the state you are occupying, and states can be left as easily as a room. That was the second key. You learn to live in the end, returning all day long to one small vivid scene until the outer world has no choice but to echo it. That was the third key. You use revision each night to close the door on any moment that tried to convince you otherwise. Refusing to let an unwanted scene become tomorrow's harvest. That was the fourth key. You examine your self-concept. You recognize everyone around you as your own consciousness pushed outward. You persist without needing the world's permission, and you visit the drowsy doorway of sleep on purpose every night. That was the fifth key. And then, at last, you rest, fully, quietly, the way a finished work rests. That was the sixth key. And here is the one recognition underneath all six. They were never six separate keys at all. They were six turns of the very same key. The key of assumption, turned a little further each time until the door swings open on its own. If what you have heard today stirred something quiet and certain in you, the 21-day reality shift was built exactly for this. 21 mornings and evenings of guided assumption, revision, and rest, walking you gently by the hand until living in the end is no longer something you practice, but simply who you are. It is available today for a small one-time investment, fully covered by a 30-day guarantee, and you will find the link waiting for you in the description below. And one last time, quietly, let it settle as truth. I am already living the answered wish. I am at rest, inside my own knowing. Imagination creates my reality. You did not come this far to keep striving. You came this far to finally rest. So rest now. Do absolutely nothing, but assume you already won. And watch, quietly, faithfully, as it comes.